Gotta talk about the Wreck-It Ralph of it all, because Ralph Breaks the Internet broke the Disney princess brand a little bit. I referred to the princesses as floating in a pink void, staring off into space, and that's something that's always really intrigued me because it's such familiar imagery that you don't think about it, but once you do think about it, it is so weird. The void isn't always pink. Sometimes it's like a light sparkly blue or something, but it's always the same thing. They're not standing on anything. They aren't anywhere. They're just in a void. And even though you might see multiple princesses on the same object, they aren't together. They aren't sharing the same space. We're just looking at them both at the same time, but they're not with each other. They're just separately in the void. It's one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it, that the princesses are always looking in different directions. A lot of the time they're all looking out. They're all looking at like the camera or the person, I guess. But if they're looking in some direction, if you follow their eye lines never cross. They're never looking at each other or looking at something together. It's such a specific visual of the princesses like stacked against each other and looking in different directions. And when you see it over and over again, like you get used to it and it seems to be just like the natural positioning for Disney princesses. But when you look at it for more than a minute, it's really weird and unsettling and unnatural. This does make a little bit of sense from a practical standpoint because a lot of princess merchandise uses the same art over and over and over again. You want to make a new spiral notebook or whatever? Okay, like put a background color, put some sparkles and like swirls on there, and then pick 4 princesses in whatever their current official art is, maybe reverse one of them and change the order a little bit, and you slap them on there and you're done. But there's a lot of Disney princess stuff with new art, with stuff that was drawn specifically for that book or that product or that video. But even when they are creating custom art for something, they still put the princesses in some sort of void, and they still do not look at each other, do not interact with each other, don't even acknowledge that the other is there. The Disney princess brand is so insanely financially successful and seems so obvious in hindsight that, like I said, it's kind of hard to realize how weird it is, and it is strange to think that it was actually kind of a hard sell for a lot of people within the Disney company. When we think about Disney in the 90s, the long 90s, most people are going to think about the Disney Renaissance and the success that the animation studio was having with its new movies, but this was also a period when Disney was figuring out how to make money from its old movies. There was so much money to be made in refreshing and repackaging these old movies through merchandising, through the parks, through VHS releases of the old movies or of straight-to-video sequels. But there was also a lot of resistance to this, and there was the competing interest of preserving the prestige and the artistic integrity of the old stuff. This tension between accelerating and monetizing the brand and maintaining the mystique that made the brand something you can monetize in the first place, that tension is like at the core of a lot of what was going on with Disney from like the 80s through to the 2000s. This image is the result of that tension. So many of the really weird things about the way the Disney princesses operate come from the guardrails that were put on the brand in an effort to keep it from making the movies feel too cheap or too malleable. The princesses each have a strict uniform, they have a very specific art style, and they do not look at each other. Okay, great, got it. So then what is this? I have already talked for so long that we are going to need a part 2.